Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition of the Free American Hour. I'm your host. I am Clay Douglas, and my guest today is Dr. Jake Wade. Hello, Jake. How are you?
Good morning, sir. I'm fine.
All right. Let me switch speakers there. I think this one will let you sound a little bit better. I hope you're feeling well. I know you've been out working on the ranch and staying busy and herding those goats.
Yeah. Memorizing everything.
All right. Well, we've got a lot happening here, Jake, and I've got the information that I've got up on my website comes from John 7:37 and 38. Come and I'll give you living water. And by the way, Dr. Jake Wade is the pastor of the Way Church in the Wilderness, and he's a member of the Truth Seekers, and he's the dean of Timothy Bible College. All of that is up on my website. You can link it. And let me just do a little commercial and tell you that if you've dropped out of high school, if you've got children and you're not really fond of the public school system, there is an answer. It's called the Little Red Schoolhouse. Jake's been doing it for over 20 years, and I've been promoting it for about that long. And you can you already graduated, you want to go to college, but you don't want to put your life in hock for a number of years with the cost of colleges. Now, Jake, isn't the cost of the colleges just going through the roof? And frankly, and let me speak about the high schools too. I've seen some films here, probably got them up on my blog TV site, that compared. They filmed in both places. They did. They filmed in a school, in a high school, and they filmed in a prison, and you couldn't tell the difference. Going to the library in a prison was about the same as going to a library in a school. Is that? Am I right, or am I off the wall there?
I have visited the ones locally here in 3 counties around me, and they have the same kind of barbed wire angled out or in, however they do it. There are guns and badges in almost every hall. It's ugly.
And you're working with people there in Luling and Lockhart about working with the kids, with some of the prisoners that they've really been mistreated. They don't have any guidance, or don't have any way to go.
Yeah, we're trying to set them up with some trade and technical skills so that when they go through the system once, one of the judges is just wanted it to bit to get us done, set up with this, because we will keep a lot of them from going back in because they lack the skill to get out, and many of them, even the self-image, they don't think they're much, so they don't end up doing much, and where they feel they can do that.
Now, and in the last Way Church last week when we came to Way Church, your discussion, and I wanted to follow up on this. I've got it up on my website, John 7:37 and 38. Come, I'll give you living water. The author of the Bible, Jesus, offers his living water in the form of a spiritual water for the spirit of man. Paul calls it the water of the Word in his letter to the Ephesians in verse 5:26. And this spiritual water is the hope of a heavenly home, a provision for our needs here on earth, and the hope of biblical history when societies have experienced God's fixing of tribulation. trying times in the past. Now, in case you didn't know it, folks, I am a member of the staff of Timothy Bible College and political science, and I think we are heading for rough times. But you know what, folks, it ain't the end of the world. I don't believe that. I don't believe that. And it's because if we get right in our own heads, in our own area, in our own neighborhoods here, God will help us, and God does provide. And He certainly kept me alive for the last most of my life. I've been somebody's been trying to kill me most since I was about 17, or actually maybe before that. I seem to spend a lot.
You just read it that the historical facts lend themselves to what you just said, that we have to maybe be a little extra patient and maybe not look to acting like the warmongers, and like you said, you have to not become evil when you're fighting evil. Sometimes that's a little harder done than said. But if you look at history, and especially biblical history, God has always pulled a remnant out some way or another and said, "Oh, let y'all start again. Let me do away with some of the evil and the evil folks, and y'all can start again." I absolutely agree with you that we need to have that hope, and I think with what's going on currently that there's actually some remnant in this country that are waking up.
Well, now we've got almost 50 states that have started petitions to secede from this corrupt system of government that we've had here. Now that's not, a lot of people are kind of freaking out about it. The White House is definitely freaking out about it. As a matter of fact, they've had some communists that have started a petition, and I've got this right up on the top of my website, right there near the Way Church and the Timothy Bible College information, right at the top of my site. They've started a petition to deport. They won't deport illegal aliens, but they want to deport any of you Americans that have signed that petition. They have got that going. Have you seen that?
Yeah, they've got a problem though. Even if this is not a true viable approach, it's sending a message, and there are thousands, there's tens of thousands already that are doing this, and if enough of us do that, it's going to send a message even if it doesn't do anything legally.
I think after, studying this, studying history, I think that they are setting us up for another civil war. I mean, the English banksters, the Jewish banksters, back they fomented the Civil War. They pitted the South, the North against the South, because guess what? Guess why? Correct me if I'm wrong, because you are the dean of my college, and that I'm attending, and I think. Yes, sir. What?
Your political science, and we agree on this, that they have misconstrued history for our kids currently in the school system, and have for a couple of generations. One of the great lies, and it is a lie that has been told and put in the textbooks, is that the Civil War was fought over slavery, and it was fought over states' rights, which brings us currently, what you're talking about, we are dead in the middle of another states' rights issue.
That's right. It certainly ain't about slavery, and they have run the Mexicans and they've run the Muslims in here, and they fomented the strife between the two. The illegal aliens are responsible for over 50,000 deaths in this country. Murders in this country, and 90% of, or a large percentage, I don't want to quote any percentage, but a large percentage of the people in prisons are illegal aliens. They are using them to come up here and murder us, and you know, same way they're using the pharmaceutical companies to drug us down, to drug our kids down to schools. If you got a really bright kid, they want to put them on Ritalin, don't they?
And they do, but let me back up to a political science rule of law issue that you have just brought up. Illegal is illegal, and petition is legal. There's something wrong with the way that this law was supposed to be living under is being interpreted by those who have the guns and badges, because illegal means you're not doing what you're supposed to do by law. So illegal aliens are illegal, and we are legal stating our view by petition, and it should not have any consequence to us, because we're sitting here peacefully saying we don't like this, and we're suggesting that we do something else with it.
I believe, Jake, that they are setting this up. Now, they've been doing this for a while. They've been doing this for a while. They've tried to, well, they tried to put down the militias. They tried to put down Christianity. I mean, you can have a menorah up, but you can't have a Christmas tree. You can't have a cross up. You know, to heck with the Christmas trees. But
yeah, give me equal rights anyway.
That's right. But this, what the whole Occupy movement, they tried to demonize the Tea Party. That's white Christian Americans that got a little fed up. They tried to demonize them, calling them racist. They set up the Occupy Wall Street movement. They co-opted that, and the only thing I can remember from the videos of the Occupy Wall Street is some guy peeing on a police car, or taking a dump on a police car, and instead of the police escorting the protesters to the banks, to Wall Street, and I think they ought to do that, they are putting the police against, and they're making the police look bad. They've turned the police into paramilitary, and they put Homeland Security in there. That's nothing more than the KGB revisited. They've already got the gulags set up and waiting for you folks. And now, on this this latest thing, on the White House, on whitehouse.gov, they have got a petition going up to deport any Americans that have signed this thing. So that, to me, it looks like just a repeat of the Civil War, and it's all over states' rights. We've had well over 20,000 people sign the petition here in Texas, and we do, in Texas, we don't have to ask their permission at all. It's part of our charter when we became a state that we can leave any time we want to, doesn't it?
Right. Let me make a comment, and you know, I think people have a tendency sometimes to follow along with the leading of the leadership of the country that has said, oh, well, we're going to tax the wealthy or the big businessman or whatever. That's a bad way to begin to think, because they provide jobs. They are the money people. I'm not talking about banking. I'm talking about the people that started businesses, that are the big corporations or the little mom and pop. That's the problem that the current government has, is that these people with the money, with the power, with the control of business in this country are going to say no along with us. They're going to side with us, and we will have some power because of that. They're not going to put up with it.
What do you see happening now? There was a film that came out a while ago, Jake. It was called Jericho. It was a television series. It was about a nuclear attack on the United States.
Right.
And
well, let me go back, because I know where you're headed, I think. If I may go back to the way you opened this with John 7 about the water. In reading in the beginning, Genesis 1 and 2, the very first two verses of the Bible, it's interesting because apparently water pre-existed from our point of view. It doesn't say God created water. It said he was on the water, or had the water, and he dealt with it. But water is really important. And he then said, well, I'm going to put light with the water. And where we went Sunday is really interesting. But the thing we got to avoid, of course, you and I are scientists. I have a science background. Science is not at odds with this. In fact, it supports the idea that salt and light and water are the basis for what we call life. So when you put it together, you've got an electrolytic cell that produces energy and can produce an electromagnetic field. The thing which I believe God's going to do is he's going to take those of us that band together and become of one ideology and realize that, as you have just said, God's not going to let us go under without doing something about this, because he never has before. And I really believe that that's going to happen again. In Ezekiel, he has said, I'm going to put some of these evil folks in the muck and the mire, and they'll get stuck where they can't get out. And I really think when you go to saying you're going to deport people that are tax-paying, law-abiding citizens, you're shooting yourself in the foot and throwing yourself in the swamp. I don't think you can get by with doing that.
well, again, we're being guided here. We're being maneuvered here into this situation. And it ain't gonna. It's probably gonna get worse before it gets better. I think, Jake. You know, but maybe it takes something like this for people to realize that you and I aren't radicals here. We're just people like everybody else. We're telling you.
Let me give you biblical history to support what you just said, if I might.
Go right ahead, sir.
Joseph, the brother of 11 others who were born of Jacob, who ended up having his name changed to Israel and is supposedly the father of that nation, Joseph was sold into slavery to a passing bunch of nomads headed for Egypt by his own brothers. And he went down to Egypt and became a vassal of the king, or the Pharaoh. Potiphar was his name at the time. He was the one in charge, and he actually got thrown in prison and was going to be killed because he was not Egyptian, and because the wife of the head guy, Potiphar, took a liking to him, and he wouldn't bed her, so she got mad at him and claimed he raped her. And he was going to get killed for that. He was going to be put to death, and God let him, or taught him, how to interpret dreams for this guy Potiphar, who was going to have him killed. And long story short, he ends up sticking him to bed for the whole country. Pulled him out, and he used his God-given intelligence and expertise to set up the first silos in the world. And we still use silos to store grain. You've got the same situation when the people, and it goes back to something you've written, and so have I, on Babylon. When you look at Judah, they were removed from their land, deported to Babylon, and treated very badly and for 70 years. And then God said, all right, maybe y'all got your lesson by now, and about 60,000 of them were not only allowed to return to rebuild, but they had the help of the enemy in doing it. So God works in very strange ways, and His people, that's us, as long as we stick to our guns and don't become like, and I love what you say, how do we do this without becoming evil? If we'll keep that in mind, and we promote what we're doing and go about what we're doing with good sense and not begin to mimic or act like the enemy, I think we win some battles.
I hope so. And folks, it's going to be done. What this move here, we've got 20,000 people over here in Texas that have signed this petition to secede from it, and I'd like to see Texas become a republic again. And then I think then they probably the only battles that we would have would be protecting our southern borders. But I would personally, you know, and maybe I could be wrong on this, but I think we are to incorporate Colorado, since they've already legalized marijuana to some extent. Not they didn't do what they should have done, folks. Let me tell you that right now. They didn't do what they should have done. They should have legalized or abolished the laws against victimless crimes and allowed our farmers to start growing hemp again. The law says you can have marijuana, you can grow a pot plant in your backyard maybe, or smoke a joint without going to prison for it, but it doesn't allow the farmers to grow hemp, which was our number one cash crop. Tell me about that, Jake. I mean, this was our number one cash crop.
It's worse than that. Farmers and ranchers are limited as to what they can do past that. And, you know, how are you going to supply food if all of a sudden the government comes in and says, don't grow that? If the government comes in and says you can't grow it that way, what's the point of going into farming and ranching and supplying other people with products they need if you're going to have an oppressive government come in and tell you what is legal for you to grow and what isn't? Now, if you're growing something that is inherently poisonous to the entire public, and it's not labeled that way, or it's not used the way it should properly, then I can understand having some restriction. But again, keep the government out of it. Let's police ourselves because we know better. Let's educate ourselves like we used to. And, you know, out here in my pasture, I dig up what's known as dill metal, because if you stick your bare leg into it, it'll burn the fire out of your leg. There are things out here that are poisonous to horses and cattle, so you know, you have to watch that, not overgraze and not allow that to grow in among the good stuff. I didn't need government to tell me that.
You know, they tried to pass a law or they tried to zone the ranches in New Mexico around Socorro. They tried to zone the ranches, and I showed up at the county meeting and said, what communist wrote this? What communist proposed this? You want to come out and tell people that have been on this land for 100 years, at least, hundreds of years, and you want to come out and tell them what they can do on their own property? What are you trying to do? Get somebody killed? And they kicked it out. The county managers or the county commissioners wouldn't go along with it, so they didn't pass the law. They came out and tried to put a meter on my well, and they've tried to do that too. I mean, this is one of the things about Colorado. You can't even put a rain barrel in under your thing without going to jail. They could go send you to jail, and this is part of what they're doing, folks. You know, you may read about and hear about in the history books about the gulags, about Alexander Solzhenitsyn talking about, you know, if we just picked up our pitchforks or our machetes there and you know, took a few of these people out, maybe we wouldn't have had to sit in those prisons for as long as we did. But it's happening here, and they go, I've always said, Jake, now what they do is they go after three classes of people in order. They go after the farmers first, and they've been after the farmers for 100 years. When they took hemp away from the farmers, that was a rotational crop. When they took the hemp away, that decreased the value of the food that they were producing, because the hemp goes down and pulls up the fulvic acid from deep in the earth that you can only get now from prehistoric plants. And then they go after the intelligentsia, that's people like Dr. Jake Wade, and they've gone after Jake since he's been on my show, since he's appeared on my show. They've gone after him, they've gone after me. Anybody that's smart enough to know what they're doing or what they're up to, then that's who they go after. And third, they go after the veterans and the police that may still be loyal to the old regime. In other words, those of us that still honor our oath to defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
Look at what they're doing to the military leadership now, because they're not lining up with the White House. It's ridiculous.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That's exactly what they're doing. And they even fired they arranged a sex scandal for the CIA director because to keep him from testifying about the murder of our ambassador over there in Libya. And by the way, the reason, folks, is the reason. If you want to know why we're going to war with Iran, we're trying to steal their oil. The same, and that's been behind all of our wars. Vietnam was the heroin. Afghanistan is the control of the heroin. The war, the drug war in Mexico and South America is for control of the cocaine and the marijuana that's being grown there and brought up here. It's all, and all of the
gold in the Middle East too.
Oh yeah. They took the gold out of Libya. They took the gold from Saddam Hussein, and there's plenty of raw natural assets, minerals that they have to have in computers in Afghanistan. I'm not sure the name of the.
And yet the current administration is shutting down our own lands when they could be used to produce oil and gas and other things.
Yes, it's predicted right now, and this is why the communists are trying to take control of this country, folks. This is why they're trying to do that. We have more oil than Saudi Arabia.
Oh yeah.
We have more natural
resources.
I both
know Williams, who was at the Alaskan pipeline situation. He was in the middle of it. He was a chaplain, and he was privy to listening to the bankers agree to not allow the production in Alaska to be as productive as it should be, or as efficient as it should be, because it would mess up their banking control. Lindsey Williams sat and listened to that.
That's right. And even Lindsey Williams isn't exactly, but he does give you a lot more truth than any of the mainstream news. There's the money for this oil that's going and being filtered through the International Monetary Fund. It's being laundered to the banks. The drug money's being laundered to the banks. I mean, this has been proved. Now, why aren't these people going to jail? I mean, I've often wondered that, Jake. Why aren't they going to jail? We've got the evidence. We know. And how come we've got more Americans in prison than communist China, than Russia, than any other place? We have more people of our citizens in prison. And
we've got another more that's not very good that goes along with that, and apparently, according to statistics, there are more foreigners in our colleges than there are Americans.